Hello and welcome to Hazard and Hope. I'm Ed, and in this episode of Our Flood Resilient Home, we're heading to Luddendenfoot in the Upper Calder Valley to hear from Katie about how flooding's affected her home and the variety of different ways in which her and her family have adapted their property to make it more flood resilient. So here we go. This episode of Hazard and Hope is sponsored by Yorkshire Flood Resilience.
We'd only been in a few months when we flooded. This bit of the street had never flooded before. It was very unexpected and we were not prepared and didn't have anything in place, as were our neighbours. We're hit from all angles, unfortunately, because it's a rapid response catchment, so we get the river just swells and goes up metres. It's scarily fast. You can be looking at it and see it rising. And then the canal, even though it's a managed waterway, all the way along the valley bottom, the water is transferred between the two. So you've got overflows that go past between the river and the canal and vice versa. And then you've got the drains, which are Victorian and become so overwhelmed. But we're in a V-shaped valley. The hillside's so steep that the water is just going to come down to the valley bottom and then fill up. So in an intense rainfall event, we are got by surface water in the first instance before the river, just because it overwhelms that drainage network and it can't cope. In 2015 here, it was a combination. You know, we had the canal overflowing, we had the river come up the back, we had the drains come up, and and then we had the surface water coming down from the road. So, and once it becomes that point, you're consumed by it and it surrounds the house. And certainly in 2015, it was just craziness. It was frightening because you're cut off as well.
What time of day was that?
It was early on the Boxing Day morning. We just looked out the back and the river was already in the garden, and it was surreal because we'd only been in a few months. We'd never seen anything like it, and it just I would want to say creep up, but it didn't. It just sort of just kept coming and coming and coming. And within the space of a couple of hours, we just had the whole lot. It was just all around the house. It was very, very surreal, especially because we'd never been in a flood area before. We'd never experienced a flood before, and we didn't know when it was going to stop coming. You don't know when the water's going to stop and how much it's going to rise. You've no idea, because the rain had stopped, but obviously you've got then that coming down from the hillside, so that the river is still swelling and the water is still coming even though the rain has stopped. And then it just sort of went, and I think that was probably the worst bit, because then you could just see the mess. It was like, and the smell was just around for weeks. It was really horrendous. It's like you couldn't get rid of it. Whatever you put on anywhere to clean, you could smell it. We had quite a lot of sentimental things that were in the garage in boxes, and we pretty much had to throw everything away that was in here because it was disgusting water. We tried to get as much out as we could, but it was a bit frantic because the other thing in this area, things happen really, really fast. So the river goes up metres in hours and you don't have the time to do things. And I think because it's happened once now, we understand that risk, so we make sure things are away and just prepare ourselves completely.
Comes to understanding, I suppose, the flood risk to the property, well, where the water came from, how high it might come, and how you could adapt the building. What was your process of actually finding out that information and thinking about what was suitable?
So when we applied for the flood grant through the council, They gave us a list of surveyors that could come to the property that were skilled in flooding, so they could look at it from and do a proper flood survey, really. We'd actually, as neighbours, thought, well, should we have a wall built round the back and club together our flood grants and do a wall around the back? And the surveyor was a bit like, oh, that could work, but it was really massively expensive. And that would have been for the back. But then we've got the canal threat as well and the surface water, so it felt like it was only doing half a job for a lot of money. So we had the surveyor back because he'd gone through the wall as well, but he'd also said, about flood doors and air bricks. But he sent the report through, and we were just a bit like, the main source of upset and mess for this property was the garage, and what if we just got rid of the garage and we took ourselves above the waterline? So we got the surveyor to come back and do another survey just on our property, and he was just said, if you want to be secure, you need to get rid of the room that is the lowest in the house and do your flood work there.
So the space we're in now used to be the garage, so this is what you've actually adapted.
It is, yes. This was the cold, damp garage, a lot lower than the rest of the house, and where all the flood water came in. It's a bit of a multifunctional space. I've got teenagers, so like this side of the room, they would watch TV, play computer games, have their friends. This changes into a bed, so they can have their friends over. And then the other side of the room we use as our office space. Both me and my husband work from home, so it just made sense to have office space, lounging space. Electrics are higher up. The actual full electric board is higher up as well. The floor has been raised on a timber frame, and then we've got things up really, so the TV is up, the computers are on a raised desk there. We haven't got much on the floor, so things can be moved out of the way really quickly. So this originally was all cream carpet all the way through.
So now it's almost kind of wash it down.
Yeah, it's really easy to clean. This is where the garage door was, and what we've done, as we said inside, was to brick it up and put the window in. We've extended the drain along the front so it can take a bigger capacity, and then you've got the waterproof render across the bottom all the way around. So I don't think you're able to notice that a garage door was ever there. We've got 13 of these self-closing air bricks all the way around the property. And then, effectively if water touches them, they should close.
Yeah. Beautiful garden. I mean, that's incredible. Really is. Is there anything you've done actually with your garden and the planting?
There was fencing all the way across the back, and I absolutely hated it. And when it flooded in 2015 and the water came in, we were left with a hole all the way across the back of the garden. Was just disgusting, that had been trapped in. So we thought, we'll have this idea that if the water was going to come in, we'll let it come in and go out naturally. Why have a fence when...
It's incredible for you.
Yeah.
You also work in and around the community with work on natural flood management, don't you?
I do, yes. So I'm a trustee with Slow the Flow, really passionate about natural flood management. We've got an awful lot of land in this area that completely lends itself to attenuation ponds and swales and leaky dams and things. Just the intention is to really slow down the flow from the very top of the valley so that it doesn't have that intensity when it lands on the valley bottom, and it eases the pressure on those hard defences that really are a necessity in some areas along the valley bottom.
And also, I suppose, an incredible way to get the community involved and participating and out into nature.
It has incredible benefits on people's well-being and it's just communities helping other communities, and it's people meeting to do something really great. We know it's not the only thing that's going to combat flooding here. It's going to be lots of different things to create the whole picture here. It's a really, as you can see, difficult geography here. It's a V and water comes from the top to the bottom ferociously, and anything that we can do on the uplands to manage that is big. Yeah. If you can save even 15 minutes, it's massive here. It really is. Things happen ever so quickly, and buying time is a big thing.
Since the event, you've also become a flood warden, is that right?
Yeah. So really quickly afterwards, we had like lots of people come down and see us, check we were okay. The Environment Agency came down to see us, and there is a huge network of wardens across the valley, but never needed in this area. And they sort of planted the seed and said, is this something that you could possibly benefit from down here? And I was like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's see what interest we've got. It's been incredibly rewarding, and it's meant that it forces you to be prepared, because I get a call really early on that something's happening before the alerts and the warnings come out. So it's good preparation for me. You don't get that surprise anymore. So even though things happen fast, because you're getting to know that potentially there could be something happening, we get that heads up. And then as a network, we go out and we speak to people and let them know what's going on. And it's really helpful for other agencies like the Environment Agency and the Council, because they've got somebody straight away on the floor that's able to give them feedback and give them information that's not a computer.
So you've got your walkie-talkie behind you there.
I do,
your bat phone.
My bat phone, which is a direct link to the council. So we as wardens, we switch that on almost straight away if we've got problems occurring, or we've got the heads up to say something could potentially happen. It's just nice to be able to reassure people and say, okay, we've got this alert, but we don't think it's going to lead into anything bigger, but I will come down and see you if it does. We've got some elderly people down at the bungalows down here, and it's extra confidence for them, and it's been really great for me as well. With it's another network of people. It's really community focused, community minded, and you get to meet all your neighbours, which I think sometimes you don't do.
Do you have a flood plan as well for the property?
No, the plan is you speak to the Environment Agency, we check all the levels. I would go out and have a cursory look around. I've got a bag as a flood warden which has got my high-vis stuff in, jacket and trousers. It's got a whistle, it's got gloves, it's got a head torch. It's got all these things for going out and about. I would then check with Richard that he's okay with all this, that I'm going to go out, and that we've got the flood sacks on hand in case we need to put them behind the front and back doors, that he knows where everything is if I'm not going to be back. And then if things are looking really bad, then we'd make the decision to move things. On my phone I'll have contact numbers, insurance company and things like that, Environment Agency, all those things that I may need to do or call. We've got all those things to hand.
How much did all the works cost?
So it was about 8,000 all in all with everything.
Do you feel like there was any additional cost in putting in resilience measures, or would it have cost sort of the same amount, do you think, to have actually just turned your garage into a beautiful downstairs room here?
I think to do things flood resilient, I think it does cost a little bit more. I think there is more of a thought process in it, and I think the materials can be more expensive. But I think as time goes on and things are more widely available, I think it shouldn't do that. And you've got to think about resale as well. You've got to think that in the future, if you want to move, you want to give the buyer confidence and that you can get insured and that you can comfortably live here with that risk. So there was tons of all factors going on that we had to think about. And I think with a lot of the measures, people don't take into consideration that things need maintaining. The self-closing air bricks, you need to unscrew the front off and get cobwebs away and things and make sure that it's actually self-closing. So you can't just leave them. And I think that's one really big thing that we look at as flood wardens, that people check the products and make sure they're fit for purpose, because otherwise your flood door is not a flood door anymore, and your floodgate is not a floodgate. Your sump pump's got the cable missing, so it's not a sump pump anymore. And just these things that I guess you don't really think about when you first have them installed, but it's further down the line when something fails usually.
I suppose particularly things like the automatic air bricks, if you're in an area where you only have a few hours to adapt, you won't have time to go and click on a manual air brick cover and make sure you've got them all around the house. And so that peace of mind, or that passive measure that works without you needing to do anything, must be fantastic, actually. I can see the value there.
This was one of the main things as well, not having to think that if we're away we'd need to do something. And I think that's why I didn't want the gates on the doors, and I didn't want to have a gate on the garage, because if we were away, I mean, I guess you'd have to get into a routine of checking the weather and thinking, okay, I'm going to be away this weekend, there's going to be quite a lot of rain, shall I just put this floodgate on anyway? For us, it was about not having fiddly things to do and not having to worry about it. And with being a flood warden, I'm generally out helping other people with their stuff, or checking rivers and things like that, and with the other flood wardens. So I needed to have something here that didn't require any effort.
Is there any tips that you'd give to any other people who may have their home at risk of flooding?
Having a good surveyor that understands the flood risk, I think that's really important. But also kicking back and asking the questions as well, and if there's other adaptations that you can do, and making sure that it's the measures that have been suggested are appropriate for your property, and understand what you need to do with those measures. If you're getting a gate and it's got 25 different fixings, you need to make sure that you know where they are and they're in an appropriate bag and they're labelled up, and how long it's going to take you to put that in versus spending a little bit more and having a flood door. So I guess we had a bit of a wish list really, and we put everything down that we ideally wanted, and then worked out what we could afford as well. But it was all based around advice, based on the flooding that happens at your property.
So it was contextual, and it was actually it was about your home and your site and your context, really, not just something that you thought, actually seen that somewhere else, let's try that.
I wouldn't just have something that next door's having because it looks good and I think it might work. You know, when we went round next door to tell them what we were doing, we said, but don't just do that. You need to get the surveyor back round that we had and see what he says, because even though the properties are the same, it might not be an appropriate measure for your home because of your proximity to the river, or a different makeup on the driveway, your drains are in different positions. There's loads of different factors.
The next question actually is about whether or not you feel adaptation has improved you and your family's well-being, I suppose. And is that something you feel has had a positive impact on? Yeah,
definitely taken a lot of the worry away. You still get worried because you can't see the future, you don't know what's going to happen, and you think maybe, we haven't done enough and it will come in through the front door or the back door, or it would ruin the car because I haven't moved it. Just, there's still that little bit of worry, but it's definitely not half as much as when we had the garage. It's definitely better, much better for everybody, because you do get anxious. I mean, even though I'm fully aware of the risk and I know exactly what I need to do, and I'm out dealing with other people's risk and helping them understand, I still get anxious myself because it's your property, isn't it? And you know how long it takes to recover, and it's not just material things as well. It's like it's in your mind. It's a psychological thing as well. The worry about it. And I wouldn't change living here. I love living here. It's beautiful. But you're always going to have that little thing in the back of your mind. What if next time? What if it's different? And what's going to happen?
I suppose it's also interesting to think that you've taken a space which you'd remembered as a garage, and now it's been changed into a different sort of a different use and a different function, and then it sort of potentially changes the memory of that space. So this is actually a fresh start and a new space and a positive step, really.
It's absolutely positive. And it's only when you look back at those pictures you think, God, that really happened. But because the house is so different, you can sort of put it out of your mind. You can't completely put it out of your mind. You still remember what happened that day, but it doesn't feel as bad. It's like you've made really positive steps to make the house resilient, and that for your mental well-being is big, definitely.
It's really kind of Katie to have shown us around her home and to have shared those experiences with us. I think it's really inspiring to see the way that her and her family have adapted their home to make it more flood resilient, but also that she's looking beyond the property level and finding ways to engage in natural flood management that can help reduce the flood risk elsewhere throughout the Calder Valley. And she's also taken up the mantle of becoming a flood warden, which is fantastic to hear. And as Katie mentioned, it provides the opportunity for her to be prepared and informed about the flood risk context, but also be a really crucial link and go-between to provide on-the-ground information and help connect and support the wider community. And as Katie mentioned, her role as a flood warden has also influenced her property flood resilience strategy. So she's chosen a slightly more passive approach, which means that she doesn't necessarily need to be there to fit and install everything, but her family do also know what to do if and when she can't be there at that time. Clearly, by adapting that space that used to be a garage, which they just used for storage, into a beautiful home office and multifunctional space has been a really positive step. So they've used adaptation to actually enhance their home, but also find a way to enjoy that space that had once been the weak point within their building. So I think it's really fantastic to see what they've done here, and clearly it's a very proactive approach to managing flood risk, and it's enabled Katie to engage with her community and I suppose feel very positive about the fact that she's being prepared, she's looking to adapt, and they're doing everything they can to manage flood risk in a very contextual way. We have also got a 3D tour of this space that's available to view at hazardandhope.com. And with this model, you can click to move around it, and there's different touch points that you can interact with to find out a bit more information about the different types of property flood resilience measures that Katie's put within her home. Thanks very much for listening, and if you'd like to keep updated on future episodes, please subscribe below, hit the bell for notifications, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.